Hello? Mm-hmm. Ho mandato la cosa?
Yeah.
C'è un volato vicino.
Dov'è che c'era? Admit Maria, isn't it? Siamo 18 e 30, no?
Sì.
Hi Maria.
Ciao.
Hi, all right.
Hello, how are you?
All right, thank you. You all right?
Yeah, we're fine.
Good.
Just wondering where another 2 minutes.
Okay, then, no worries. You're looking good, both of you.
Thank you. Siamo stanchi.
See?
Molto.
Oh,
Actually, dreaming of an early night with a book.
7:30. We're both thinking,
what, tonight?
If only.
If only.
If only, I know. It's horrible, isn't it?
It is. I think Friday night we're going to be in front of the telly sleeping, or just, I think I'll go to bed with a book.
That sounds nice, doesn't it?
Yeah. Had a good
What are you
day?
reading? No,
Oh.
no, I'm just so overloaded. So overloaded. But hey, what can I do? I can only do so much per
Peter
per day.
Yeah. I know, only so many hours.
I know. There we go.
Hi, Peter.
Good evening, Peter. How are you?
Exhausted, but pretty good, thank you.
Well, just join the club, because we were just having that very conversation about being exhausted. We said we're dreaming about going to bed with a book. I think we're getting old.
About doing what, sorry?
Going to bed with a book.
Oh, right.
And I said, I think we're getting old, because old people used to do that when I was young.
I've done that for years, go to bed with a book. It's great, sends you to sleep instantly. I'm reading Bill Bryson, More Notes from a Small Island. Do you know him at all?
I know Bill Dyson, but I don't not that book.
Okay. Well, you know, he's an American who's lived in England for very many years, and he's written lots of great books. But this is a sequel to Notes from a Small Island. And he basically just goes around England taking the mickey out of English people.
Oh, really? What, their politeness? Is that one of them, or one of the things, the traits that we've got?
Not so much that, no.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, but also out of Americans as well. He's very rude about Americans, but but he also thinks that we don't know what we've got and what a fantastic country it is.
Yes.
Mm.
Good evening, Amit.
Hi.
I don't know if you can hear us. We can see your picture.
Hi there.
Hi. How are you?
So I thought I wouldn't slurp in front of you guys.
Oh,
don't worry. We're on join the club. Join the club.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it, I forgot my
Hi, Neves.
Hi, Neves.
How are you? How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Oh,
nice to see you.
And you, lovely.
You're fully recovered now? You're fully recovered?
Not yet, but much better. Yeah, just a little bit of leftovers.
Not yet. It takes a while.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Hi, Ida. I was going to say just quickly, hi, Ida. Just welcoming everybody as they come in. Yeah, so you're not fully recovered, Nevis. Nevis had, you don't mind.
It's like going through hurricanes.
She was not being very well.
Oh dear.
Yes, yes.
Your hair looks very well. Your hair looks amazing. I'm going to have mine like that.
That stayed intact through the whole thing.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. See, mine's all gone.
Good evening, Vincent. We're just saying hi to everybody as they come in. And Darius, there's Darius, our speaker. Lovely.
Always useful when the speaker turns up, isn't it?
Yes, good evening, Darius. Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear us? Darius,
You're
talking to you.
you're on mute,
Oh,
Darius.
hello. I didn't hear that you're addressing me. Hello. Yes, I can. All good.
Hello, nice to meet you in virtually, and we're just waiting for people to come in.
Awesome.
18 people have actually said they were going to come, so we're just waiting. So normally people are about up to 5 minutes late, so we're just waiting for them to come in. Where are you today? What part of the world are you in?
Well, right now I'm in Lithuania. Like all the traveling is pretty much restricted, so
Yes.
can't have that much freedom as you used to. So yeah.
Have you stayed there most of the time then, since this COVID outbreak, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, well, yes and no. I mean, I was living in Lisbon for a bit and then went to Bali a few times. So, still traveled a fair bit, but yeah, got a place here for now until it all passes, and I can get back on the road. How's London? How's everything there?
Sad, very sad. Yeah, very sad. I was in Piccadilly the other day. There must have been about maybe 10 people, the whole of Piccadilly.
That's sad.
Just like a ghost town, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's
Where was that, Luca?
Piccadilly.
Oh, Piccadilly, right.
Yeah.
probably particularly visible in like larger cities where you used to have, the bustle of a city, and now it's all deserted. So
yes, it's quite sad. For some reason, though, that before the lockdown, although the city was quite empty, there's lots and lots of traffic. So we don't know where people are going or where they're coming from. It's just weird. And they've got these cycle lanes now because they don't want people to sort of like be too close to each other for social distancing. So they've created all these cycle lanes, and obviously the lanes for the cars are just down to one lane rather than the two, so it sort of causes congestion. I don't know what's going to happen afterwards, but it's a bit of a pain.
I vote for riots. Personally, shoot down anybody who rides a bicycle in central London.
Oh dear. How do you manage with the languages, with all these places that you go to? Or are you multilingual? That would be really nice.
Well, I wish I could say that I was multilingual. No, I'm not. Like I barely know 2 languages. So yeah, but I mean, yeah. Well, I do speak basic Indonesian. So that helped when I was in Bali. Yeah. But,
right. Okay. So, well, that's something, isn't it?
Well, that helps. Yeah, like
yes,
talk to a waiter. But probably no more than that. Couldn't go to bad.
Good evening, Shirin.
Good evening. Welcome.
Hi. Welcome.
Hi.
Sorry, I lost the email. I just found it. That's why. Okay,
oh, good.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Just waiting for some more people. We'll get going.
Introducing ourselves.
Yes, we'll start introducing ourselves. Yes, we have got a few more people coming. So you're based in England, are you, Shireen?
Yes, I'm in London.
Oh, you're London. Oh, fantastic. Yes. Okay. And you're part of the Roger Hamilton community as well?
Yeah, I just actually discovered it last week or 10 days ago. So I joined, and I joined the citizenship for 1 year, so to see what it's about.
Fantastic. That's really
fantastic.
wonderful.
Well, that's what we're here for. I mean, we normally would run like in-person events in central London once a month. Obviously, at the moment we're not. But this is the first place, I mean, to join the community, entrepreneur community in London. So feel free to ask any questions.
So is it like a networking event and also a speaking, we have a branding talk?
Yes, and you see we got Darius here just next to you. It's our speaker tonight. So yes, in a minute we'll introduce ourselves. So we'll do a little bit of as much as it's possible. We need do some virtual networking, and then Darius will be the main speaker for the evening.
So welcome, Julie. Good evening. How are you?
Julie is our clubhouse star.
Hello.
Hi, Julie.
I'm very clubhoused.
Oh, no. Good evening, Penny, as well.
Hi, Penny. Good evening.
You're on mute, honey. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
We can see you smiling and waving, but that's
Hi, Katrina, Luca, and
Hi.
Darius. Love to see you again.
Fantastic.
Hello, Penny. Hi, Julie.
Hello, Darius.
Nice to see you.
And
There are
you,
so many
long time
familiar
since I've seen you.
faces. Yeah, awesome. Like, it's been quite a while.
So you feel at home here? That's wonderful.
Yeah, totally. Like, and Neves as well. Hi, Neves. I didn't.
And Rosaline
I
will
was
be joining
prepared
us around. So I say Rosaline will be joining us. I know that she's the one who introduced us to you, really. That was Rosaline Bloomfield. So she'll be joining us as well later on.
Awesome.
She runs a yoga class until 8 o'clock, so she'll be coming after that.
Yeah, so
She'll be too relaxed to join us then, won't she?
Yeah, she will be. That's right. That's why she always does look relaxed. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we better get going because it's about 7:10 now. So welcome to everybody, and welcome to everybody that we haven't met. We love new faces and people coming to our events. So also I'd just like to extend a warm welcome to Darius. I know we said hello already, but thank you very much for agreeing to be our speaker this evening. We're really looking forward to hearing you sharing your expertise with us. So Darius will be talking about how to craft a compelling brand story. So that will be after we've done all the introductions. So for those of you, are you all aware of what Genius U is all about, or should I just give a very quick introduction to that? We're part of the Genius U network, which was founded by Roger Hamilton. There are over 1 million members worldwide, and there are around 80 city circles. We are the London City Circle. Luca and I have been running that for around 2 years with the help of with Julie and Peter and Woon. 5 of us have been running this. And as Luca mentioned, it used to be in London, Covent Garden, but now we're running them virtually on the first Wednesday of every month. What we like about it is that, you know, it's a place where entrepreneurs can meet and talk about business and share ideas and give advice. But the thing that we've really enjoyed is making developing friendships. And some of you are actually online now with some of our friends. We really enjoyed that. It's been absolutely fantastic. So if we move on, if we could just introduce ourselves, we'll go around the room and get everybody to introduce themselves. So if we can start with our members first and ask Peter if you could introduce yourself briefly about your business and obviously who you are.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Peter Tussell and I run management training consultancy. And at the moment, I'm frantically gearing up for a workshop for the TfL Executive Committee. And I wasn't sure who they were when they first asked us to do this, but I've since discovered it's all the directors. So that's causing considerable excitement here at Tattersall Training. Like the director of Crossrail 2, the director of the Tube, the commissioner of the whole of TfL. So it's, woo! Isn't that wonderful? So that's exciting on that side. And I also run something called the Retire Richer Club to help people do very simple, easy investing. And last Friday, my Bitcoin account broke through $100,000 in value. Ooh. So it's like, hooray, you know, it's fantastic. Okay. So I just wanted to put this out there as a question. I'm considering offering a kind of a free kind of get to know Bitcoin, what it is, how it works, why I think it's a great store of value. But I'm only going to do that kind of service if there's enough people interested. I don't want to start kind of gearing up for something that people say, well, actually, I'd never touched that in a million years. So go and stick your Bitcoin, you know. So, so if that would interest you, please just kind of say in the chat, yes. And that will give me an indication of in this group, you know, who's interested. Shireen didn't hear. What is it? Okay, it's no, it's not Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin. B-I-T. Bitcoin. That one. Yeah. So I know there's a lot of fear around that and a lot of misinformation. So yeah. So let me know, and if I get enough people interested, I'll start, you know, kind of doing a series on, you know, what it is and why I think it's going to be amazing.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that. So if you're interested, just put that in the chat and Peter will follow up with that. Okay, and over to Julie now, our other team member.
Okay, my name's Julie Hogbin. I do various things. I am a property investor. I run HMOs, so houses of multiple occupation, and I'm a leadership management coach consultant. And I've worked with a lot of people over 3 decades. And I'm a three times published author. Somebody reminded me of the third one the other day. I am all over Clubhouse like a rash. And I'm a master trainer with the Entrepreneurs Institute, which I don't always say, but I am. I run a podcast called Conscious Leadership, which has the A to Z of business and Wealth Wednesday as themes that run through it. And I actually mine Bitcoin.
Oh,
well, no, I don't mine Bitcoin. I mine crypto.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And Woon, can you hear us?
Can I ask Julie a quick question?
Woon. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we're just going to introduce Woon, who's also part of our team. You've just come in at the right moment. So we're just going and doing the introductions. If you can introduce yourself and tell us all a little bit about what you do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Woon. I run a company called Podcast Publishing. So it's a podcasting agency. So I help impact entrepreneurs set up and scale their podcasts. So that's kind of what I do. And I love to work with impact entrepreneurs because I love to hear their stories and the stories of the guests that you guys are interviewing. So, and I've been helping Katrina and Luca and Peter and Julie with the London City Circle for the last year or so. Well, I think
2 years now.
2 years now. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, 2 years. They roll into one. It's gone so quickly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Maria.
Yes, hi. My name's Maria. I work full time, but I started doing Reiki. And I'm just doing it virtually, basically with people because I can't have them come round to my house. So that sums me up very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Nevis?
So I'm Nevis, and I have beauty salons here in London, but I haven't seen them for such a long time due to lockdown that it feels like I'm like without work. So yes, that's me.
Oh, it's glad to have you back. Really glad.
Thank you.
So Darius, we're going to let you introduce yourself afterwards, if that's okay, or did you want to?
No, I think that's appropriate. Yeah, I'll just do it as part of the talk. So
yeah, lovely. Okay, thank you very much. Shireen, would you like to introduce yourself? Hi.
Yes, of course. Hi, I'm Shireen. I'm an artist, a painter, and an educator and entrepreneur. I do usually art workshops for like after schools and holiday club, and also I deliver art workshop for adults. However, everything like kind of is off since last year, and I started to focus more online on growing like my new venture called Color Empower, which through it I like to empower people through like positive thoughts and colors together. And I'm setting up I'm already now delivering my like free mini course, bringing together creativity and personal growth. And the course is based on exploring creativity through the 6 human needs discussed by Tony Robbins. and I'm very happy to be here. I just actually, the thoughts of connecting people through personality types was always in my mind, and I was always searching and thinking, oh my God, like this personality test, like I've done the Myers-Briggs before, and it's so much I kind of resonated with me. And I always thought, oh, it would be amazing to connect with people from different personality types that they can help me. But I never kind of passed through something like that. I only heard that companies use these tests. So when I discovered Genius U by coincidence, kind of, 10 days ago, I was very happy. So I'm very excited to be here and to connect with people from different personality types and, to empower each other.
Yes, oh, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. And over to Penny.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Penny Sophocles, and I run a business called Corporate Alchemy. And we are a learning and development organization. We provide executive coaching and training for leaders in very, very large businesses. But in the last year, because of the lockdown, I provided some mentoring for small entrepreneurs. I'm a flow consultant, a performance consultant, a health dynamics consultant, and a mentor on the Entrepreneur Institute. And I've been a Crystal Circle member with Roger Hamilton. So I've been around for about sort of 6 years, and I provide all of the mentoring and training programs that Entrepreneurs Institute provides. I did the Wealth Dynamics program just before Christmas this last year, and one of the things that I discovered, which almost I had in me but I didn't quite recognize, was I'm really passionate about women leaders, and the fact that women now need to kind of step forward away from the kind of patriarchal thinking that's also in their own heads. And so I'm looking to find some women who are interested to become the leaders that our world needs them to be. I think the world is changing, and I think women have a great deal to contribute into the world. And so it's around, I'm trying to sort of gather some women who want to make that difference in themselves so that we can make a difference in the world.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Meet, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you really well. Sorry,
Fantastic.
I'm not such a great place to do video right now. But my name's Amit, and I run a global education company called Inspiral Education, and we connect kids from different parts of the world to learn together. And one of the things that we realized is our first program is on freedom of expression. And as you know from watching the news all over the world, freedom of expression is or our freedoms generally are being kind of taken away. And so this topic has become really, really kind of interesting. And we sell directly to schools and work with teachers to deliver our program. But I started to think maybe that this is an interesting program for parents to do with their children as a way to kind of really improve their digital literacy, to understand how they're being influenced and to do it themselves so they can actually get a better sense of how they're being manipulated by the web. So that kind of consumer focus has kind of brought me back into this space and to reconnect with, with the Roger Hamilton community and just kind of get my mind reset on becoming a potentially consumer focused entrepreneur as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, over to Ida. Can you hear us?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you. I'm sorry because I have a bit headache, so I just closed all the lights and then just to light a candle. It's a kind of romantic place here, just to be. You can't see my face. I'm sorry because of the light. So I'm living in London, and I'm a storyteller and TV presenter, and helping and supporting entrepreneurs, especially social entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs, about their stories, how to tell, how to craft, or just how to make their stories really appeal and effective. So my passion is all about storytelling. So I'm really happy to just see this event and then you guys. So yeah, just I'm happy to be here right now.
Lovely. Well, you're in the right place, so welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Vincent, can you hear us? No.
No, you're mute at the moment, Vincent. I mean.
Okay.
Okay, so just a little bit about ourselves. Katrina and I, we both come from a banking background, but we really are heart, we are serial entrepreneurs. So we started several businesses in our time. In particular, the ones that have stuck are plant hire in central London, mainly in large corporations, and property and crypto investing, which are taking over at the moment. Actually, in April, we'll be presenting as well an event on blockchain and Bitcoin as well. So, Peter, we haven't talked about this before, but maybe we can discuss it and we can do something together for the April event.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because it's something that is at the moment is booming, and I think everybody should know this new technology. Whatever you think about Bitcoin, the blockchain technology is here to stay, and not only that, but it's changing the world we live in, and we realize in the next 12 to 18 months. Will become well known by everybody, but by then it'll probably be also a little bit late to benefit from the growth that's going to be absolutely astronomical in the next 12 to 18 months. Okay, so just talking about a little bit about Genius You and this group. Ida was mentioning that she's very passionate about being social aspects of it, social entrepreneurship. And this is kind of like a social event for social entrepreneurs. And what one very strong feeling that we had when we actually started running this group is that we did it for social impacts. And as such, I would like now to give Peter the word, as everything we do benefits somebody else around the world through Buy One G1. So Peter is a Buy One G1 ambassador. So the microphone to you.
Great, thank you. Just before I do the Giving Impacts last month, I couldn't buy the ticket for good for this event. So
I couldn't either.
No. Was anybody able to buy the ticket for good this time?
Yes, I did.
You did? Oh,
yes,
thank goodness.
Me too.
I brought a friend, but she didn't come.
Okay. Great, well done. That's great. So we will have some Giving Impacts next month. I was a bit worried about that. It just had a 0 and it was kind of grayed out, so I couldn't. Did you have the same? Did you, Maria and Julie? Yeah. So a bit of a glitch. Your microphone's off, Katerina.
Just this month, or I mean, because
just
we've
this
never
month.
Okay, we were wondering why there weren't so many contributions, so that makes sense. What you're saying, I don't know what happened there. I've got no idea.
Some people did.
Some people managed to do it. We had a few, but not as much as we do normally get. So okay, never mind. Maybe next month, so won't have that problem. But
yeah, mine was grayed out as well. I couldn't contribute.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I ask something just quickly? How it's possible to know more about the Genius You and, like more in person? Like, I know now you give like a very brief thing, but I'm interested, like, in knowing more.
Happy to have a chat.
Yes, definitely. We can contact you and we'll have a chat on the phone, or we can have a Zoom call if you like. So yes, we'll make sure we do that. There were 2 tickets, places in the area. Donation. Ida, thank you very much, Ida. Thank you. So as Lucas said, what we're going to do is Peter's going to actually share what impacts we've made with your kind donations. So thank you very much. We'll pass the stage over to Peter.
Okay, so it's saying host disabled participant screen sharing, Lucas. So if you could share, allow me to share my screen.
Okay, done.
Okay, excellent, good, okie dokie. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
And you can see the slides? Brilliant,
Yep.
great.
Yes.
So let's do, okay. Great. So last month we bought 1,200 bricks to build high quality classrooms and toilets that are safe and secure in Cambodia. Sorry, it says Kenya on the left there. That's because I didn't overtype that bit of the slide from last month. So let me just read you, because that doesn't sound terribly much until I give you a little bit more detail from the project description, which says, so this is in Cambodia. While the main cities in Cambodia may seem to be thriving, the majority of villages outside cities remain invisible and unsupported and have no share in the socio-economic growth. This, coupled with the very poor condition of school buildings, means that education takes second place as parents fear for their children's safety. Can you imagine that? Worrying that the school's going to fall down on your kid. That's just so awful. So you've helped to build high quality schools in rural communities, provide children with a safe and secure learning environment, which is fabulous. So very well done. Give yourselves a round of applause for that.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to be asking Darius to take the stage in a minute, but I just wanted to mention that at the end, just before the end of the meeting, Julie will also be sharing a thought for us to go away with. Last month, she talked about karma, and I just wanted to share that I actually did go away and think about that, and I was holding on to something that wasn't serving me. And as a result of Julie's thought that she shared with us, I gave something up, and it's amazing that when you make room for something else will come into your life, and that's exactly what happened. I was holding on to this thing for months, wondering what to do, and I gave it up, and as soon as I gave it up, something else came into my life that's serving me a lot, better, and that is going to be in my future. That will be my karma. So thank you, Julie. I just wanted to share that with everybody. Yeah. So we're looking forward to what you're going to share with us this evening. We don't know what it is. It'll be a lovely surprise, but I'm sure it'll be very thought-provoking again. So anyway, we're going to be...
Katerina,
yes.
Sorry, just before you move on, Rosalind's now joined us. I don't know whether you wanted to introduce herself. And
yes,
right.
Sorry, Rosalind.
Well spotted.
Well spotted, yes. I know you're all dark there, but we can see your name. Can you hear us?
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't.
Hey, we can see you. Hello.
I was hoping you wouldn't spot that I'm here.
Yes, you were at the bottom, but there we go. We just spotted you, and we did spot you. So, hello and welcome.
Right. So, hi everyone. Rosaline. I've just finished teaching yoga, so I'm kind of a bit. Well, I'm not disoriented, but I'm.
You look relaxed.
Relaxed. Switching between two things. Yeah. So that's me today.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our speaker for this evening, who's Darius Lukas, who's going to be sharing how to craft a compelling brand story. So I just want to give you a little bit of background on Darius. I know a lot of you do know him, but Darius is an entrepreneur. He's a writer, mentor, and samurai in training. His Singapore-based company specializes in online platforms that include language and writing schools. He studied English literature at the University of East Anglia and also trained as a theatre director at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. As you can see, he's very artistic, and he uses his knowledge and experiences to help brands tell compelling stories through their products and services. Now, included in the multi-million brand companies that he has worked with are Entrepreneurs Institute, Genius U, and Entrepreneur Resorts. So, can you please give a very big virtual clap and welcome Darius Lukas to the stage.
Thanks a lot for such a nice introduction.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. It's actually really nice to see so many familiar faces. That's really lovely, because as I was putting the slides together, I was thinking that I wouldn't know most of the people, and actually I do know most of the people. So so that's very nice. It sort of changes the tone as well. Whatever I will sort of share, I can easily bring it back to wealth dynamics, the whole methodology, that Roger has created, because a lot of the inspiration has derived from that. So I won't be as specific as I go along, but feel free to then ask any questions and bring it back to what's familiar to you, the profiles, promotion plans and whatnot. Yeah, so may I start, Katerina? Cool. So actually, Katerina just did the whole introduction, so that spares me, the whole effort of trying to introduce myself. But I guess one of the things that I would sort of mention that really brought me to the point of really devising this whole method of how to use brand storytelling as a tool to help entrepreneurs, small businesses grow their enterprises was actually through working with Roger, for Roger, around Roger for 5 years. So I first started off when I moved to Bali after quitting theater directing. And I was living in London at the time. I moved to Bali, and this was where I met Roger, which is probably the case for most of us here. And I ended up shadowing him on Crystal Circle calls, where he used to mentor, a lot of our entrepreneurs. Now I think he's reduced that mentoring, and so I was around him for like those 3 to 5 years, and then that went into me storytelling for his companies, and then further going on my own path and merging my training as a theater director, as a writer, and everything that I've learned from Roger into brand story, mentoring, consulting, and so forth. But alongside being and working with Roger, I've built up my own language learning platform, which was really like taking all the Roger highlights, lessons, tips, and putting them into my business. And by the end of the third year of working with him, I was having a fully fledged business. And so that was like one of the bigger cornerstones that then allowed me to really focus on doing what I love, telling stories, helping other people tell stories. For a couple of years, I traveled around the world and ran journaling workshops, which was all around how to use how to actually upgrade your own personal story before even moving on to your enterprise story. And then I ended up training as a samurai, which was then a whole lot of experience, which then I incorporated further into what I teach. But that's like a brief introduction. But the way I've just introduced myself, that's sort of pretty much data, facts. What usually works better in most brands, and for most people, is actual stories. So for example, if I was to share that my journey was from having a breakdown on a theater stage to the path as a global entrepreneur, probably that would be more relatable. This is the story with which I open my website, and I share how, back in 2012, I was living in London, studying in this prestigious drama school, and then feeling totally miserable. And then having started to question what life was all about, I ended up moving to Bali and then building up all these enterprises. And this is what is considered to be the way I just portrayed that journey without going into further detail. This is what is commonly known as a hero's journey. And most brands do that. Most successful brands do that. Most successful politicians do that. And if you look around, the brands that you'll sort of understand the archetypes, narratives, and storylines that they use to sell their products, to communicate and connect with their audiences. And what I'd love to do today is give you a quick introduction to the hero's journey framework that you can then adapt to whatever you decide to be doing in the next month or two, whether that is a campaign advertising campaign that you're launching, whether it is a product launch, whether it is a webinar that you're running, a lot of that hopefully can be applied. So, and then I'll propose and share a framework that could be of help, I believe, in working with your brand story. So if we look at brands who story tell well, it would often be, you know, if you look at Red Bull, for example, the whole brand story was always about, you know, as they say, high on caffeine and achievement. You know, they featured in their whole brand is all around achievement, accomplishment, courage, daring, being brave, and that's the whole story that they narrate. So whatever they do with their product or do not do, whatever marketing campaigns they launch, whatever posts they publish on their social, whatever events they organize, they will always be brought back to the hero's journey. And that would be a person who's active, who's engaging in extreme sports, the person who is a high achiever, a person who is, you know, at the top of their game. And you wouldn't question going onto their website and wouldn't like expect to find anything else but that. If you look at Arianna Huffington, who would most of you know, she tells a beautiful and relatable story, how she then, when she was founding and working on Huffington Post, she collapsed from exhaustion on her computer keyboard. And that was a wake-up call for her. She realized that she was overworking, and that's how she ended up founding Thrive Global, this whole enterprise, where she, you know, spreads this whole idea about a different metric of success, and then that being, you know, the satisfaction, being able to rest, being able to sort of create and build enterprises in harmony. But if you Google Thrive Global, that story of her collapsing from exhaustion is the key story around which she has written books and has built up the whole brand. If you look at Coca-Cola, who has successfully been doing their advertising for centuries, right? You'd have this whole story of connection, of pleasure, of happiness. And whether that was in 1950s or, you know, now, they have always been promoting that whole idea of connection and selling happiness in a bottle. And that has always been their story. Now, whether we ethically agree with what they're doing, that's another matter. But these huge companies obviously have shown how they master their storytelling and how good they are at really crafting a narrative that everybody relates to, because that's how our brains work. We understand everything in stories, through stories. And whether it is a team meet with your team members, whether that is a webinar that you're running, whether that is a product launch, everything is really just a story. Even you know, a pitch deck to your investors, that is also just a story, ideally a future story with future promises, backed up by current data, again packaged in a story. And if you look at popular examples, for example, look at Madonna, you know, so her whole story is, I came to New York with $35 in my pocket, and this whole rags to riches story. So this is just the premise, how powerful brands really get us involved and take part in their world, and how they get us to relate to their product, how they get us to connect to their message. And actually, if we look how we all ended up here today, and that is through Roger, through Genius U, through Entrepreneurs Institute. And I think that's what they've done well. They also crafted a very empowering story of which we are all a part. They have created a world into which they invited us and allowed us to then continue and be creating, you know, social circles like this one today, mentoring programs like some of you mentioned that you're running as based on their method. So they really handed us the narrative within which we then create our businesses. So, and if you look at you know, and as I worked, you know, as a storyteller for them, they don't spend that much on marketing in terms of ads and Facebook ads and so forth. Their story is alive within the community. And how they done that is usually, and this is what I have been involved with, was customer stories, success stories, you know, where we filmed hundreds of entrepreneurs that sort of excelled as a result of Entrepreneurs Institute and Wealth Dynamics. And we've written up their stories, we filmed their stories, we talked about them, we interviewed them, and we created this whole world into which we have all been invited. Now, how do you go about creating this whole world? What does it comprise of? Where do you start? Because I know that it might sound nice on the outside, but then the question is, how do you actually, you know, start creating it? So this is where we go into this whole idea of, you know, the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is commonly known as a concept created by Joseph Campbell in 1950s or 60s, where he literally surveyed, looked into all these extraordinary fairy tales, stories, tales, religious tales all around the world. And he really took all of those frameworks and created one particular framework, a storyline which applies to practically every story, every book that is out there, every Hollywood film, you know, and that is a hero's journey. And without sort of going too sort of deep into that, the premise of his framework is the whole idea that we meet a character at the start of their journey, living in their status quo, living a life that is either mundane, uninteresting, or stagnant, and then they get a call to adventure. So, for example, if you remember Harry Potter, he was living under the stairs in that small room. His life was very ordinary until he gets the call to adventure, until he gets called to go to Hogwarts. And as I'm sharing this, just think how that applies to everything else that you might have seen, read, shared, talked, and delivered in your workshops, in your communication. So then Harry Potter obviously gets called to adventure, right? He then goes to Hogwarts. But then the journey starts with him having allies, and that is, you know, him meeting his friends, Hermione and others. Then the initiation sort of begins, and slowly he goes into what is called the dark night of the soul, or the stage where you slay the dragons. It's where the hero is tested, trialed, where he undergoes this purging of the soul or the body. And it's almost, you know, in fairy tales, it's almost at the point of sort of they face death at that point. In modern tales, that's usually the hero's inner conflict. And until they reach the breakthrough and the four return to their ordinary world as a winner, they return to their ordinary world as somebody who has managed to go on this journey, slay the dragons, find the treasure, and become better of it. And then by them returning to their normal world, change that ordinary world. So that's the traditional story. But now, how does that then apply to your brand or your company? So if you imagine your customer being a character who has a problem, who then comes and meets a guide, and a guide that would be you, whoever is providing the service, the product, the solution to their problem. Then you, as their guide, as their ally, you then give them a plan. And with that plan, that can be your product, your service, your mentoring program, your whichever you decide to create, You then give them a plan and you call them to action, to adventure. And whether that is a weight loss program, and as a result of that, they will lose weight, whether that is, an investing webinar, an investing program through which you will teach them how to invest. This is you calling them to adventure. And then, which then obviously will end in success, or rather will help them avoid failure, depending on whatever product you're offering. So, and this is what these brands that I mentioned earlier have really understood. And then they really mastered this whole art of turning their customers into their heroes, and really create, and their brand then becomes the world into which, as I said, they invite us to be part of, rather than just to buy from and to not really relate, but rather really to take part and actively engage with the brand. And really, I think since we all know and understand Wealth Dynamics and Entrepreneurs Institute, this is a good example of what the brand does, how they then manage to pull us in, make us heroes through giving us their plan, giving us their methodology, giving us their tools, which we then all use. As a result of all of that, we are here, which for most of us, it means, that it helps us, grow and succeed. So at this point, I think a good thing to think about is, how do these brands, and just ask, that question of yourself, how do these brands turn their stories into cash flow? And then what stories can you be telling to be turning what your stories into cash flow? And in a way, you can transact without a story. You can coldly sell a product. You can offer services as an accountant without attaching much story or soul to it. And that will likely work if you're smart about it. Now, but extraordinary things happen when you do add the story, when you do add that element of soul, of emotion, and create the world for your customer. And then they come in and they never want to leave because they're part of something bigger and greater. For example, in my case, I've created a language learning platform where I have like over 1,000 students, and they're all active paying students. And the reason why they stay is not really the content, because everybody can access content. It's very easy. I mean, language learning is all out there for free. But we empower them through really understanding who they are, what they are wanting, and telling them that learning a language is actually a template for your own personal growth. It's not only that you learn a language, you actually learn a new worldview, and you do that with your community. So we have people who stay for years just because of that. And they email us and say, well, that the language learning changed their life, which to me at first was pretty funny, because I was like, how can that even change your life? It's just learning a language. But I realized that the added value was the story that I told, the story that other teachers told. Because the people that I usually try to hire with my team are the people who have stories to tell, the people who are, really incredible personalities. And that's just the case in my business. But I think, as Roger once actually said, that people usually buy because of a shift in consciousness. And what a good story can do, whether that is a sales call, a webinar, your product in itself, your whole storyline as a brand, and we'll talk further how to actually create that storyline, how to actually create a story arc, that people actually do buy because of a shift in consciousness. And as they read your story, as they listen to you, they are changed as a result of hearing you, as a result of understanding where you're coming from. And that's the art of actually creating and telling a good story, is when your customer feels rewarded if they have undergone a shift in consciousness through consuming your story. And when I say your story, it does not only mean that you have to talk about yourself, not at all. You know, we looked at examples of Red Bull, like there's no one person that's actually talking about themselves. We looked at Coca-Cola very briefly. Obviously, there is very little about them. Even our Entrepreneurs Institute, although Roger is at the center of it, there are many, many stories that they tell of their customers, their clients, that is nothing really at the end of the day to do with Roger. I remember once we did this video with, some of you might know him, Michael Dong, who is, I think, an investor, property investor in the UK. And we shot this video story, a 3-minute long video story, where he told us how he managed to really change his mindset around how he invests and how he scales his portfolio. And we had so many people come to us after that story who said, well, actually, you know, I realized that so much more is possible for me. And that's because of that I'm joining, you know, Crystal Circle or buying whichever program that was there at the time, because we managed to actually turn one of the customers into a hero and really tell their story in those 3 simple and short minutes. So if you think that every piece of writing, video, audio, product or service that you create at the end of the day becomes a mini hero's journey that you are taking your customer on. And obviously we could talk a lot in how you actually create that and you know, what comprises a hero's journey. But I'd love to offer, you know, like a very specific starting block framework that could help you, you know, start mapping out your brand story. And hopefully we'll sort of go back to the given examples and you can then ask questions. But just before I go into actually breaking down the framework, I just wanted to ask if everything is sort of more or less clear. Are there any immediate questions that are arising? Is there anything that, you're wanting to ask or say? Just very quickly, whilst I take a sip of water.
Yes, Shireen had a question that she put in the chat. Did you want to share your question, Shireen?
Sure, no problem. I think while you were speaking about the journey, the hero's journey or story brand, because I took a course and I had to create like a roadmap where the kind of, you know, the client starts and where he finishes. And I think this is like a hero's journey, right? It's like the client where he starts and where he has to finish.
Well, you can apply the notion of hero's journey in many ways. So you can first look at holistically at your brand as to what story you're telling as a brand as a whole.
Yeah.
So like we've looked at it very generically, what Red Bull does or Coca-Cola does. Now you can then look into what is their hero's journey within your company, within your product, within your service. Like what is their journey that they go through as a result of joining whatever it is that you're offering. And you can equally apply that for sure, because what you will show to them at the start, you'll show them where they are at right now, yes, exactly, and where they are wanting to be or what they're trying to avoid, you know. So yes, it definitely applies to your journey. And a successful customer story is actually showing that trajectory of before and after, you know, how they started off and evolved throughout, you know, your product, your service.
Mm-hmm. But usually these things that are hidden, usually they don't show them directly, but in some state, some kind of, depending on the, I think the services they offer, they can show them, right? But usually like big businesses, they don't really show the journey. It's kind of hidden within their services, right?
Well, it's implied, you know, it's implied, it's communicated out in you know, they won't say, you know, this is what happens step by step, but they will tell, you know, like Coca-Cola says, you know, you suddenly be happy as a result of buying that bottle. You know, you will be an overachiever if you drink Red Bull. You know, if you join Thrive and their course, you'll get your entire team harmonized and be able to sleep at night. You know, it's all communicated there, And they also show where the people are at right now and what is the state that they need to get out of most of the time. So it's usually implicit already in most cases. I might just continue, and then you might have questions towards the end, and then you can ask.
Thank you.
Unless there's anyone else that wants any clarification before we continue.
I just wanted to add, I think the sort of undergoing the conscious shift in consciousness, I think that's a very powerful and very important part of the storytelling. When I work with a lot of podcasters, I share very similar concepts with how to craft the brand, the podcast brand, to get it so that people actually create podcasts that actually gets shared and has the potential to go viral. And I think everything comes down to the ability to for the stories within the podcast to be to shift someone's consciousness. So I think that was quite useful.
Yeah, 100%. And that's definitely what a good story does, That's why we're so hooked on Netflix sometimes. Okay, so awesome. Okay, so now whilst the first part was sort of fairly, well, one might call it theoretical, but I hope to make it as practical as possible as we go along, and especially in the Q&A part. And also, if you have any specific questions to your brand, feel free to ask them at the end. But now let's move into actually, starting at the most important part and pillar of telling your brand story, and sort of telling and crafting an overall coherent story that everybody can relate to, become part of, and immediately by coming onto whichever social profile you run and have, that they would immediately have that sense of what you are about, and that they would be able to either resonate with your story and want to become part of it, or be able to immediately identify that that's not for them and work as a criteria or as a filter for them not to join, not to follow. And that's also okay. But, and so the way that starts is really, looking at what are the key 3 pillars, in other words, themes or through lines that I am communicating through my brand in every possible medium, including my, whether it is services and products, product descriptions and social media posts, videos, absolutely anything and everything has to become part of that whole and not to be disparate or just sort of loosely hanging around. And what I mean by that is that when we start working with, and actually Neves was part of the Brand Story Bootcamp, one of the initial cohorts as a group, so she can later share maybe what her takeaways were. So what we usually do at the very start is you look at what are the key 3 themes or through lines that you are communicating through your brand. Through line in theater or in film is the character's main purpose of action in terms of the plot. It's what they are trying to sort of carry out throughout the play. It's their main narrative. And in your brand, that becomes a theme or 3 themes that you are actually driving and that really drive your products, your services, and everything that you do. So here, and I'll share this framework as well. I'll drop the link where you can just sign up, and I'll send you this framework as a Google Doc. But this is where I want to break down the thinking that could potentially help you, start mapping that out for yourself. So once you map out the 3 themes, they could look something like this. In my case, it is theme number 1, brand storytelling and strategy for freelancers, solopreneurs, and SMEs. Then journaling as a personal growth tool for women plus 50, usually professionals who are professionals or starting running their own businesses. And then as a sort of flair or a spice to the soup, I bring in the ancient philosophies, which is I Ching or samurai, to support anything that I would be communicating, teaching, telling, sharing through bound storytelling and strategy and journaling. So what this means that every product that I decide to create, and any program that I decide to create, any post that I put out would have to fall under any of these three categories. And if it does not fall under any of these categories, then it's something that we shouldn't be putting out at all in order to maintain the consistency within the brand. Because a lot of the time you'll see, people sort of sharing everything and anything on their profiles. And after all, when you come and visit their profile, you have no idea what they're on about and who they are, whether as a brand or as a solopreneur. So this is where you start sort of really building those three pillars that will drive your entire brand. Because there are ways to then attach the stories to your products, the way you market them, the way you sell them, and really be powered by very clear and concise message. And the fewer the messages, the better. If you think of Gary Vee, for example, and what he does, I don't agree with what he does, but he's a master at having those couple of messages and just marketing them, insanely. So the more specific, the better. And whilst, when it comes to journaling, yes, not only women who are plus 50, who like journaling, who are running their businesses, join journaling membership or workshops with me, not at all. But this is whom I have in mind, because these are the people that have been coming on board. And I tell those stories to them, and I write them in their language or the language that I feel they would resonate with. So once you map out these three key themes, the through lines that will power and drive everything in your brand, you can then go into and look at what are the sub themes. So the sub themes would be like the sub pillars that are holding up the whole structure. So I'll share the framework as I said before, but you simply then under each of these main themes, you'll be mapping out the sub themes. So it will look something like this. So whilst brand storytelling and strategy was a bigger theme that I won't deviate from at all, then I go and ask, what are the bigger sort of buckets in which I want to be telling stories? So I would be, thinking of story-driven marketing, story-driven team, brand voice, personal brand versus company brand versus product brand. So I map out sort of the secondary themes, which are still broader categories under which the rest will fall. They're the same, for journaling. Then I go, well, I could be talking about journaling methods. I could be talking about journaling for productivity, journaling as a form of therapy. And then it goes with ancient philosophies. So what I really encourage you to do is to really pick what are the key three themes that you're always communicating. And a lot of the time, like when I work with entrepreneurs, they often say, well, but I have so many themes to talk about. Like there are so many things to talk about. I'm definitely not going to limit myself. And yes, you may not. You don't have to. But the problem is that then you become general, and much harder to relate to. So, for example, if you are all about crypto and investing, it might not be wise to start talking about trauma therapy, because it will be just completely out of place. Now, a lot of people will think, well, I'm a diverse personality, I want to do that. Yes, you can, but then to keep the structure standing solidly, the specificity is required. So being specific over being generic is what counts. So I usually really try and get people to be very specific in how they're going to be communicating. And even if it's a podcast that you're doing and you have to produce 500 episodes, you wouldn't be deviating from the core themes, because that will help you drive the whole ship forward. You'll be recognized for those themes. People will come to you for those. Now, there are stories, obviously, when people reach a certain level of success and they are just known for being themselves, yes, they can do whatever they wish. When they are on a smaller level of success or recognition, rather, they don't have as much freedom. Even if you notice what Roger does on his YouTube channel and that gets the most views is the stories that he does about the likes of Elon Musk or Richard Branson. He even says it himself. People are, searching first for Elon Musk and Richard Branson, not me. And that humility is what helps him get the views and be found, and then later be found as Roger and Wealth Dynamics. So that just sort of is one of the close to home examples, what people choose to do. So this was the third step where you would map out your subcategories. Now, then you go into content brainstorm board, which is the place where you look at all these bigger themes that you've mapped out, the key through lines for your brand, for your social, for anything that you decide to do, and the sub themes. You then go and ask yourself, as a brainstorm exercise, because this is just a very initial framework, this is not like a method in its entirety. This is just a very start, which I believe can really get people started on structuring their story. You just ask yourself, okay, well, if I had to communicate within those themes that I just mapped out for a year, what posts and articles would I be writing? What videos would I be producing? What social media ads would I be putting out? What lives on social media channels would I be doing? Be it Clubhouse gathering? What email sequences would I be writing? What photos and visuals would I be choosing for those topics? Because I would want to be known for those specific themes, topics, keywords. And you go on and on. And actually what we then do very often, and not very often, actually always, is really like I get people to then think what products fall under these categories, especially if you're just starting a business. That's usually the case, or if the business is not performing. Obviously, if a business is viable, it's a much easier job. You just structure the story to fit what's working. A lot of the time, it's the reverse. But you attach your stories to your products. You make your products be fueled by your story and your stories, be it your origin story, be it smaller stories of your customers. It's all how you really achieve that shift in consciousness. So I'm just going to quickly drop the link to, so this is like my weekly story newsletter. But if you just sign up, I'll just send you the whole format and framework that I'm showing. Oh, I sent it to Neves. Sorry. So yeah, I'll send the framework as a Google Doc tomorrow if you sign up. And I see a question from Penny. It's a very good question that Penny's asking. I'll answer in a minute. So Penny's asking, are the themes that you're picking? So are the themes picking up your customer avatars? Yes. Well, so first, what we usually do, and for example, and maybe Neves will share at some point today. So what I usually get people to do is first map out their customer avatars. And what I get them to do is to look at their customer avatars and their customers rather than avatars as characters in a play, in a film script. And the reason why I do that is where I said that we want to be creating a whole world for people to come into. Now, for that, to view your customer as an avatar, as a statistic, is quite, it doesn't do the job. So if you view them as a character, as a fully fledged human being with their own story, you really see them fully for who they are, and you're able to then communicate to them. So first, we usually map out who, we do the simple mapping out of customer avatars as well, but then we go further into actually mapping out their psychology. And actually, there's one simple step that I included at the start and I didn't share, is one simple exercise is that I get people to do. I ask them, so say, imagine that your potential customer is at home scrolling through their Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn feed. What is running through their mind at that point? What are they thinking about? What they are worrying about? And really write out that dialogue, that monologue in the first person as your potential customer. Because your potential customer is not the person, it's not just Claire who lives in London who makes X amount of money and has X amount of children, but it's also Claire who has all these particular worries, desires, dreams. And there is the dialogue into which you want to tap in And not only that you want to tap into the dialogue that she's running through her mind, but also you want to be using her vocabulary and her vernacular that she uses for herself. So there's a lot of work that I usually encourage people to do with that, is really look at their customers as characters and create that play, that script, that brand, that world for them to come into and become part of something much bigger. So customer and their story usually comes first or second. And first, I usually try to start with your origin story. So that's, in the case of Ariana Huffington, was that story where she collapsed on her keyboard. For companies, and you can create an origin story for a company, it might not include a person. It's always possible to do that as well. So and you can do that for a personal brand, for a company brand, for a product brand. But so you work your way up, and at some point, once you mapped out your customer and their story, you mapped out your brand story, and the key messaging pillars, you looked at how that reflects in your copy, in your website. You then want to look at how that story, bigger story and multiple smaller stories, then relate to your products and how they drive your products. Like a lot of the time, how I find that, like in the learning community that I have, or even the brand story community, it's enough for me to write 2 or 3 emails telling a compelling story, and I get a lot of replies of people wanting to join whichever product is in question, because I'm very clear about what stories I'm telling in order to connect to my audience, and I'm trying to the best of my ability to speak in their language. So to recap, this is a very, very quick, very brief framework, which can sort of start helping you create that solid foundation upon which you can then build further. And you can then look in a much smaller detail as to what story you're telling within your team. For example, if a lot of you are familiar with Team Charter that Roger promotes, that every business at green level should do, that's a story. That's like 80% of that Team Charter is a good story. Like one of the one of the steps at green level is building a strong team, creating the talent pathway. How do you create a talent pathway? Is actually obviously tell a good story about your company, about the opportunities and possibilities for the person joining the company. I mean, so it's all a story. And for example, Roger is a master storyteller. I'm so happy I can use Roger as an example here. Otherwise, like it's usually a can't. So this is pretty cool. So yes, and then you go further and really, tell these stories in whichever format it comes. So for example, some of you mentioned health dynamics. So we created, say, Joe's story, how Joe Formosa turned his struggling health clinic into a thriving global online business. We really mapped out her origin story in a way that obviously empowered her collaboration with the Entrepreneurs Institute. Or like Angie's story, how Angie instead went from a PA job to a leader in the education revolution. Obviously, there's a whole other topic, is how you actually craft these stories, and that's more of a story skills workshop program type of thing, where you look into how you actually tell the story. Now we just look at it sort of more holistically. But one thing that I would say is to really just, if this is of your interest, start looking at whatever is around you, whoever you're following, and really ask what stories they are telling, what stories they're telling through their webinars, their services, their products, and really try to identify them and pick the best people to model on, because they would have cracked the art of storytelling. So maybe that would be a good point for questions. Or maybe actually, Neves, would you like to add anything in terms of what was your experience of actually mapping out your brand story and identifying your brand story when we were working in the brand story bootcamp? Maybe you can add anything that I haven't yet said.
Yeah, when I signed up, I didn't really expect that there will be so much content, which is super useful. So when we started, we first had to go back to our own story and map out our own lives, which for me was so many ahas, because as entrepreneurs, I think we always look forward. What is the next thing to do? We don't really often look back. So once we get to look back, I find so many threads that actually allow me to see where I want to go forward, because the reason why I joined was that I've been 20 years in this beauty business, and I was wondering what is it that I would like to do next. And it felt like an open space, and I didn't know which way to go. So once I looked back, I realized that the threads are already there. I just need to take them, follow them, and create the next thing by using what I already like created as my path. Like it was something that I loved and enjoyed being part of. We had an amazing group of people, which helped a lot to compare to where they are and where they are going. So I really highly recommend it. I had lots of fun, and it was something, and I loved that you actually gave us so much that we could take. Like now, when I want to do it, I can just go back to the formula and just use it for many different things. It's like all nicely written there. You don't need to brainstorm. You just follow what is set up, because it allows you to really effortlessly create, the product, the story, to work on the client. Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you, Darius.
Thanks, Steve. I didn't know you were going to be here. That's very convenient. But no, but actually, like with Neves, like I remember how we sort of connected, and then she said, well, like I want to start this whole new thing. So that means I don't have a story. I've been running beauty salons for 20 years, and then therefore it's not somehow related. And I was like, well, that's exactly what makes your story powerful, because you had been running these beauty salons for 20 years. And a lot of the time we underappreciate our own story and the power of it, either as a company and its track record, or as individuals, and it's so important to just really, especially if you are a solopreneur, how you can really leverage your story. Like, and we had for example, Michelle Moore from South Africa now lives in Austria. She moved to Austria, set up a hotel, and also started a career as a coach. And then she was like, well, I ran this very successful business in South Africa. I sold it. So I really don't have a story anymore. And I'm like, well, you do. Well, that's your story. That's like everything that you've done is your track record, So it's very interesting, how people just do not, it's like we can't sort of really see ourselves objectively a lot of the time. I mean, of course, some of us can, but it's really identifying the key pillars that would make you unique and help you tell the story. But anyway, so maybe that would be either sort of any direction for Katerina, or just questions possibly.
I got a question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Darius, the examples you shared was when you were with Genius U sharing customer stories, but then when you are working with Neves, you're talking about like the personal story. So how does it differ when it comes to personal story and compared to customer stories? So one of the things that I've been struggling is my personal story. So I've always used customer stories because it was easier. I guess like as a star profile, I can quite easily shine a light on my existing customers. Yeah. So in terms of my personal story, how do I actually craft it? Is it just the storytelling structure that I need to, put the pieces together? Or, I mean, I obviously I know my story, but then I don't know whether that itself is enough, or is it does it do the job? But that's the one thing I couldn't figure out.
Well, I think it's always a good strategy, especially if either one is uncomfortable with telling their own story, because that happens quite often, or you're unsure how to tell your own story. Definitely, like the best tactic is to actually tell the stories of others. That's 100%. Now, it also helps to, alongside, have your own story, so that people could recognize themselves in you and your journey. And this is where the art of telling your story comes in a sense of, choosing which parts of your own story to focus on. So we have, like, most of us obviously have lived long enough to have enough stories to tell and have a certain professional trajectory, but now like which aspects of that trajectory do you choose to make up your origin story? What is the key event that brought you to do what you are doing today? Like, why are you doing the podcast right now? Why are you not, I don't know your story well, but like, why are you doing podcasts and not in a job? You know, like what makes you want to help others tell their stories through podcasting? What is it about your story that, you know, people can see themselves in and realize that you have what it takes to help them on their journey? And these can be very simple things. It doesn't have to be massive accolades. It can be just your human accomplishments, you know, just the level of empathy, a certain story. Like in my case, like I share how, and that whole story of having a breakdown on a theater stage is fairly true, in a sense of that I had a breakdown before my first press conference as a theater director. And I realized that it wasn't working for me. And this is really what made me question. So I used that story as a pivot story, as a key story that, like, you know, was my call to adventure. So you do map that out in a sense of, you know, and it is a process of editing that, you know, and realizing what would work totally. But you do both, I think, at the same time, you know, and start with customers, because it's easier to see on others what their story is. You know, it's much easier to see how great other people are and what they're good at, and emphasize that. You know, so it sometimes takes more work with our own story and to blow our own trumpet, which is you know, not always comfortable, and sometimes it is. So
cool, thank you. Yeah, that was very useful.
I've got a question, Darius.
Sure.
So I'm interested in what you said about the through lines. Is that what you call them? So yeah. For example, for me, I've done kind of lots of different things, and I know that health and well-being is kind of, I call them red threads. It's something that connects them, but I've not been able to connect them in a way that I like so far. So these through lines, how do those work in terms of bringing together lots of different kinds of themes, for example, into something that's coherent in terms of a brand story?
So what would you say are the key themes that would be the themes that you would be focusing on if you had to try and like narrow them down? What would you say?
On the spot, what?
Because health and wellness, obviously, like they are massively broad categories, which is just the door to enter. But now, you know, which are the chairs that you sit on? What are the chairs that you sit on? You know,
so
what are they called?
Well, for example, I've got a lot of stuff around yoga because I've been doing that a long time. So I kind of know a lot about that. But I also do coaching, and I have a particular approach that I use, and I can see the similarities between the two, but I can't quite work out how to merge, you know, bring it all together into a really powerful story.
Well, but first of all, they as categories are not too far off. So you definitely can easily have yoga, and obviously probably you'll go into being specific what type of yoga for whom and so forth. And alongside, you can have coaching easily, and make sure that there's a bridge always between the two. You link back from one to another. They're totally there. And then your story is like, how did you get to do that? Why are you doing that? Mm-hmm. What is it in you that is making you do that? You know, and you want to storytell. So I would just say, yeah, so that would be your two main categories, plus add the third, whichever is of your, just as you said, you have many. And then build down from there, you know?
Like, you know, because so for example, my original background is in the corporate world. So I left that, did yoga, coaching, read hand. So I got a lot of things, but it's all around spirituality and health and well-being.
Yeah, but they all related, you know, yeah, and you definitely want to use your story while you left corporate. That this is your story, you see. So this is gold. I don't know the story fully, obviously, but this is what you want to use. This is probably what brought you to yoga. This is what probably you know, makes you a good coach. This is what makes you understand what people go through if they're stuck in a job. You know, whether they are harming their bodies just by sitting at the desk for 12 hours or just being uninspired, you know. So definitely, I mean, that's your story. So it's very good. I mean, definitely use that. So how did you go from a corporate job to being a yoga teacher and a coach, you know?
I've written the story already.
Say again?
I've written that story quite a few times. I just never use it.
Well, maybe it's about time.
Okay, so that's interesting. Okay.
You've got it all there, you know. They're not too dissimilar. All good. Awesome.
Thank you.
We've got Penny, who's actually shared a very powerful story in the chat, and she's happy to share that with us. So if she'd like to mute herself.
Would that be okay with you, Darius?
Oh, absolutely. Go on.
Yeah, well, I just suddenly realised, just hearing you talk about the kind of inner dialogue, it just suddenly triggered what's the inner dialogue that happened in me when I've been talking about the woman, you know, the women leader things and why I'm so passionate about it. And what it started triggering me is my inner story about the fact that actually I was brought up in a Greek Cypriot family. And my father was a very male dominant man, and he brought me up and the girls up in this kind of community that actually women were there to serve men. And I have two memories of my father beating me. One because I had failed to clean the dishes. And the second one, he got me out of bed early in the morning because I had failed to clean his shoes. And he beat me with a stick. And it's like this terrible memory that I have of actually being brought up in a situation where I was required to be of service to men. Secondly, that I didn't have any personal freedom. I couldn't go out with my girlfriends. I couldn't go out with boys. And it was very, very restricted. And the prospect that I had with my father was that I was actually going to end up having an arranged marriage. It was that serious because my family were immigrants into England, and they were sort of holding on to this really tight community sort of printing. And my father died when I was 16. And that was almost like the freedom that I was given because he died enabled me to live a whole different life. And you know, obviously at the time I was very, very distressed, but looking back on it now, it's like that was my call to adventure, because then I chose not to stay in the Greek Cypriot community. I became independent. I went to work to college and university, and really stayed separate, very separate from the Greek community. And I can see that the printing that I had is the printing that I see so many times in so many women, of all different orders. You know, it might be, mine was very hard, but women even today, they're printed by this thing that they have to be pleasing, that they have to, you know, be pretty, that they have to serve men and keep men happy and keep men pleased. And it's like, you know, that's just anathema to me, and it should be anathema to women. And so really it's just got me thinking. That's my story, the backstory to why I want to make a difference in working with women.
This is such a beautiful story. I mean, thank you so much for just being so open and sharing it.
Sure.
And imagine, you know, like one thing is to say, I want to empower women around the world, which sounds just ambitious sometimes. But if you tell this story, we relate, like we really get it. Like, you know, I would, if I was a woman, I would struggling in a certain situation and heard that story, I would love to connect with you and be like, that's who I need to talk to, because she gets me, she will get me, right? So she's not just having a political cause that she's campaigning, it's her story. And this is what makes you tick, right? We probably all now listened and it moved us.
Yeah,
so
thank you for the opportunity.
So beautiful. Yeah, thanks, Penny.
Now, Shireen, I know that you had your hand up. if you'd like to mute yourself and ask your question.
Muted.
You're muted, yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I just wanted to ask Darius, you mentioned the boot camp. So what do you offer exactly?
Well, it's usually a group program where we work specifically with all of this, but maybe we should just leave that. I mean, you just can email me and I'll tell more. But essentially this literally like, how do you map out your brand story? How do you tell your story either as a solopreneur, an individual, or a company? Who are the customers with whom you're communicating? How do you then link those stories to your products? How do you then, actually in Roger's terms, create a promotion plan which is powered by stories, and then further learn to tell stories through whichever medium is your medium.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very briefly. But if you just
Darius, I'm interested in that as well.
Awesome. So I can just connect.
Yes, if you could send me the details, or if they want to get in contact with you directly, we can do it both ways. Send me the details, and then we'll send an email out to everybody
Sure,
so that everybody has access to that. And if you also want to private message Darius, then feel free to do that as well.
Yeah. And actually, if you just simply now like that link that I sent, that I dropped for the framework, if you just enter your email there, I'll remember your name and I'll like message that way as well and send the information to Katerina. Totally. Yeah, but I'd love to be answering questions possibly because that's probably more value, and we can talk the whole other things, programs and stuff after. Yeah.
Any more questions from anybody?
Yes, I have a question.
Cool.
Darius, I don't suppose you know the answer to this, but I'm wondering where, I mean, I love Roger's stories about Elon Musk and, the robot wars, kind of Amazon and Tesla and all that kind of stuff. How does he find those stories in the first place?
Well, what he usually does, he has this whole, I think it started off as an entrepreneur inspiration series. If you go to his Facebook, there will be an album on his personal profile where he had been writing these stories for 5-7 years. I think that his whole approach is to find something topical, meaning that is current, that people will be searching for, and finding something interesting in that story. So I remember there was once, I can't remember the name, I think a couple of years ago, there was this Olympian who won a gold medal in the swimming category. And Roger just managed to go search, look him up, and find some really interesting details which nobody had ever heard of. I can't now be specific because I don't remember.
He's a young Singaporean swimmer, and then he met. I think he met who's the guy, the American swimmer, the all-time what's his name?
Michael Phelps.
Yeah, Phelps. Yeah, so there was like a photo of this young boy who was like a teenager, and then with Michael Phelps, and then another photo of like him beating Michael Phelps at the Olympics. So yeah, that was, I think, the main.
Yeah, and the point being that so he manages to take something that's current, find different and unique insights, I suppose just by being a genius that he is, but also just knowing how to Google. And then he writes it in a very concise way, in a way that also major publications then sort of pick up those stories because they are topical at that time, and they sort of like, approach him and sort of just put them in whatever publication that they run. So to answer shortly, just keep an eye on what's current, find a unique angle on that, ideally through the lens that would relate to what you do. That would be topic that those people that are looking for example, Elon Musk could become your clients. So if you structure that story in that way, he also very often structures that story, not YouTube channel possibly, but the written stories, he does usually structure them in the hero's journey type of way, because it's often the stories how an entrepreneur X, was poor and lost and whatever, and suddenly found the specific formula, and through which he then, created this global business. So that usually be the template actually that he uses in one shape or form. If that answers your question, Peter, at all.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's a tremendous idea. I've immediately thought, well, there's the guy who persuaded me, an entrepreneur, to go big on Bitcoin, I could maybe, you know, kind of do some YouTube videos about, you know, my hero who, you know, got me into Bitcoin, and kind of his name, because he has a massive following. It would probably, you know, people searching for his name would kind of bring me up doing my kind of take on him. So thank you for that idea. That's a gem, that is.
Yeah, 100%. And then obviously probably there are people in crypto world that you follow, and just see, and even like, for example, Elon Musk tweets something and says something about crypto. You can then turn that into your story, you know. So just find the key people that would be Googled and take stuff from them and get.
Oh yeah, because you know what Elon Musk did? He changed his Twitter name to Bitcoin, and then put this cryptic tweet in saying, well, it was inevitable, really. And that's what took my account through $100,000. His little, you know, that tiny little intervention.
And this is the story
so
that you
people
should
to buy it.
And this is definitely the story we should be doing either in writing or a video, like, you know, how Elon Musk helped you, you know, 10 times your crypto account as a result of, you know, his tweet. And then, yeah, and just share that and in that sort of structure. And that's a very, very good story.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter.
Any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. It was absolutely amazing and really, really interesting. And I think it makes us value what we have and what we've been through as well, instead of sort of like hiding it, that we should be using it as a strength to promote ourselves and, as you say, link it to our customers and push that forward. So thank you so much for sharing that. And you said that will you be sending us slides, or can you share those? Are you?
Yeah, I think it would make sense if I just shared the actual Google Doc that I screenshot and used as part of the presentation. So that will be just the actual meat of it, and people can go through it and write through it, you know. So yeah, if you just sign up to that link that I dropped, and I'll send them via there, but also I'll send everything to you, Katerina. And then
brilliant. Okay, yes, thank you. So we can work that out as well. That'd be wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah,
very much.
No problem.
So thank you for coming all the way from Lithuania. I don't know what time is it there?
Well, it's 10:30, so it's 2 hours ahead.
Oh really? Oh really? 2 hours? Right. Okay. You must be tired. But thank you very much. That was very, very interesting. We really enjoyed it. And so if we could just please say a big thank you to Darius and
thanks a lot for having me.
Yes, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so what we'd like to do is pass the stage over to Woon, who'll be telling us where we can get the recordings. If you could tell everybody about that, please, Woon. You have to unmute yourself first. You can't lip read, I'm afraid. I haven't got that skill.
It's the lockdown anthem, isn't it? It's the lockdown anthem. You're on mute.
Yeah, so let me, I mean, there is a YouTube channel of all previous recordings from this series of Zoom, I guess, Zoom socials that we're having. So it's actually Entrepreneurs Institute London, I think that's what it's called. And let me just drop the link here. Entrepreneurs Institute London City Circle. Yeah, so if you're interested, that is the link. It's really just all the old talks that we've had. And yeah, so, and I believe you can actually see some interviews there as well. We have a, yeah, if you go to the playlist, there's actually a series called Have You Been Rogered? So, which I think which is a really cool series of interviews of some of the people within this community. So yeah, that's kind of me, really.
Thank you, Woon. We'll be posting that link in the email that we'll be sending out, so you'll have access to it that way. And if you want to look at or watch this again, then the recording will be there. So right now, we're going to pass you over to Julie, who's going to be sharing her thought. Over to you, Julie.
Yeah, so Katerina asked me, before last month, about sharing something at the end of the program that would support people to do something or make them think about something and potentially think differently. So last time I shared about karma, which Katerina clearly took on board and did something with. Yes, fabulous. So what I thought I'd share today, seeing as the environment we're currently operating in, is something to do with releasing the pressure on us. So as part of lockdown, I mean, you all know this, so I'm not pitching it, but I wrote a book called Stress the Reality, and stress is preventable. And stress as a definition, and I did some morning sessions for this meet. So stress is preventable, but we have to know what it is that's causing us the pressure that then becomes too much pressure, which causes a stress. So what I thought was that I'm going to ask you to think about something that is putting pressure on you that is not conducive. So it's not positive. It's not a particularly good thing to have on you. Now, and pressure comes from our home life, our work life, our financial situation, and our relationships. That's sort of the 4 key areas. So what I was thinking I would ask you to do is to identify what the pressure is and do something about it, which is quite a challenge for some of us. And to do something about it, we have to, one of the things that causes the undue pressure is when we perceive the thing to be a threat to us. And that changes how our body works. So I'm going to ask you to pick something that is not serving you, whatever that might be. And that's probably the best way of saying it. It's not serving you. It's putting undue pressure on you. It can come at you from any angle, and then to do something about it. So it could be something that it could be a relationship. So it could be somebody in your life who maybe isn't being as positive as they could be towards you. I'm going to ask you to have the conversation, release the pressure. It could be something that you know you're doing to yourself, as in maybe eating something you shouldn't, drinking something you shouldn't, doing too much of something you shouldn't. So to relieve the pressure and change it, it could be that you are not doing any exercise. That's my one, by the way. So I'm putting my hands up on this one. It could be that you're not doing any exercise. So I'm going to ask you to do some. I'm not saying it has to be huge amounts. You know, it could be 5-10 minute walk 3 times a week or something, but it releases the pressure. It gets you out of yourself. It could be a friend who's, I don't know, said something that's niggling in your head. Have the conversation. So it can be anything, but it's something that's not causing you to feel as good as you possibly could. So that's my sort of thought and challenge today, to do something that will relieve the pressure on you, however you do that and whatever it is.
Thank you very much. That's a lot to think about, but I'm sure that we can all relate to one of those areas. And yes, thank you. I was thinking lots of different things. Yes, we've been asking you, yes, next time whether or not you've moved forward with that. But thank you so much. I just enjoy listening to you. You just do make us think very deeply. Thanks for that, Julie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Back to Kate. Oh, you've got something to ask us, Shreen.
Yeah, just a question. Like, I mean, now we are meeting online. This is the first time I do like networking online. How do we exchange? We don't have like business cards to exchange, for example. How do we connect together afterwards?
Yeah, the easiest way would be to join the Facebook group, the Entrepreneur Institute London City Circle. We'll send you a link. We'll send you a link. We can have a chat about it maybe on the phone. So you know how to connect with Genius EU and with the London community as well. But yeah, we got a Facebook group and a Facebook page. You can connect to other people from London.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome. Right, okay, so our next meeting is going to be on the 3rd of March, and we do have a speaker who's going to be coming to talk to us, and that is Gail Edwards, who's just joined us. And I just want to open up the stage to Gail, who can just introduce herself briefly and tell us what she's going to be talking to us about. So over to you, Gail.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me this evening. It's lovely. Oh no, don't tell me my internet's about to go.
You're fine at the moment.
We can hear you, you're fine.
You can hear me, okay, great. It has been unstable all day, so forgive me if I just suddenly disappear. But thank you anyway for inviting me this evening, just to introduce myself and also to get to see some of you as well. So in March, I'm going to be coming to talk to you about something a little bit random, but it's not as random as you'll realize when I explain to you. It's all about standing up in your own hallelujah. And really what that's about, it's about your personal brand. It's about being able to leverage your unique qualities, gifts, talents, and expertise in order to amplify your brand, in order to create clear, confident, and articulate messaging about your brand. And also, let's be honest, we are all in business, and we are in business in order to create profits. So we're also going to be looking at how your personal brand helps you to multiply your profits. One of the things I'm going to be talking to you about the profits, though, is how to make more impact on a global scale with those profits. So there's something that I'm very passionate about called the human-to-human economy, which is all about, you know, for every interaction that somebody has with me, that then creates a giving impact for somebody else that's in need, a community or an individual that's in need somewhere else in the world. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So there will be an exercise for you to do. It's not going to be you sitting there listening to me, I'm afraid. You are actually going to have to dig in and, you know, get working, because at the end of the day, this is about you being able to really build and leverage your personal brand. We are in a digital age, and none of us can escape the noise that surround us digitally, and how do we make ourselves stand out? So by the end of our session together next month, I'm trusting that you will all have something that really does help you to stand out. So thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Gail. And obviously we're going to have also the story that we will have prepared. Thank you to the various input today. So it's quite fitting that we carry on along the same line, because I think all entrepreneurs struggle to tell their story.
Absolutely.
As we found tonight, tonight from Darius and from Gail. So it's something that it doesn't matter what business is, in which area we operate, but we can all have a little help in our story, and working on that. So thank you both for the presentation tonight, and for the one that we're going to have next month.
Yes. So. Right, okay, so we're coming to a close now. We'd like to thank you again, Darius, for being our speaker this evening. I think we've learned an awful lot from you, and I think you've given us lots to think about as well on a deeper level. So thank you for that. And thank you to Peter and Woon and Julie as well for, sharing everything, and for Gail for coming and sharing with us what we can expect next month. And so we just bid you all good night, and thank you for coming. We really enjoyed the evening, and we hope that you have too. So if we could just all give ourselves an applause and say good evening, and thank you again. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for running a great social again, Luca and Katerina. Brilliant work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.